Hello, I'm Dr. Rodney Ford. I'm a paediatrician, gastroenterologist and allergist. Today I got asked an interesting question. A mum asked me, Dr. Ford, how did you get so interested in gluten? That's a good question because a lot of people think that I'm totally gluten-orientated or gluten-free orientated, but that's not correct. Lots of illnesses, as you know, are caused by gluten, but there are many illnesses that aren't. I'm a paediatrician. I see lots of children for all sorts of troubles. But my interest in food allergy and food intolerance began over 30 years ago, and I wrote my PhD thesis on it. Here is a copy of it. Food hypersensitivity in children, diagnostic approaches to egg and milk allergy or hypersensitivity. I did a lot of research, and in fact I was asked to contribute to this book, Food Allergy and Intolerance. I've been interested in food allergy for 30 years, and during my studies a lot of the mothers were saying that their babies and children were a lot better when they removed wheat from the diet. I was doing skin prick testings at the time, and the wheat allergy did not show up. So I didn't have a test that I could make the diagnosis. I left the idea parked in the back of my mind. But in the 1990s, that's 10 years after I wrote my thesis, a test came available called IgG gliadin antibody. And I had a lot of patients whose mothers were saying that wheat upset their children, and what I'd started to do was to check out the gluten test in these children, and lo and behold, it was often positive. I became very interested in this because of a girl called Elizabeth who came to my clinic. Here she is. Isn't she beautiful? She came to me, not in the ballet dress, but looking like that, thin. And 2 years later, she was a beautiful child like that. She was gluten sensitive, and she was the first child in my pediatric practice that I put onto a gluten-free diet who did not have celiac disease. And I wrote this up, as you know, in this book called, here it is, The Gluten Syndrome. But the first book I wrote was a few years before then, and it was called, Are You Gluten Sensitive? Your Questions Answered. To my knowledge, this is one of the first books ever written on gluten sensitivity. And my colleagues were not impressed. They thought that this was fringe medicine, and they would not hear me and would not believe that gluten sensitivity was an issue. So why would I focus so much on gluten without the support of my medical colleagues? Well, I'm a paediatrician. Children come to see me who are sick, tired and grumpy. And they're told that it's just a childhood thing they're going through, that their poor growth, well, it's just a childhood thing, their poor behaviour, well, it's just the parenting, their sore tummies, well, they're just making it up, their headaches, well, all children get headaches, that they get diarrhoea and constipation, well, that's just how they are. These children who had all these symptoms were just told that they were normal and they would grow out of these problems. They did not grow out of the problems, and in fact, I got 50 mothers together and they wrote up their stories, and here's another book. Here it is, Sick, Tired and Grumpy, and we call these children who are gluten sensitive sick, tired and grumpy children. I found that if I do the gluten test, if it's positive and the children come off gluten, that their symptoms go away. The parents are delighted, everybody's happy. The only people who aren't happy seem to be the medical people in my city who still are very reluctant to take on board that gluten can cause so many symptoms other than celiac disease. So my interest in gluten is because when I put these children on a gluten-free diet, or gluten zero I call it now, they get better. It's not because I think that gluten is the worst thing in the world. It is that when you take these children off this particular substance, their symptoms vanish. They've had decades sometimes of symptoms and they're better. The parents go off gluten and they feel better. So I've come to target gluten as one of the major problems in our health system today, because so many people, when they rid themselves of gluten, get better. So it's not me pushing the gluten barrow, it's my patients encouraging me to speak out because they want to have the official diagnosis of gluten sensitivity rather than going alone. So that's why I'm interested in gluten.